Are we all settled? Get settled. All right, we're good to go. Very exciting panel. You guys all ready? Got stretched your legs? Awake? All right, good. All right, here we go. Go in.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for choosing this panel. We really appreciate you being here. Yes, we sat under our corresponding pictures and names. That was all planned. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Ann Whitney, and I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Skydance. And I'm just going to set the stage before our lovely panelists introduce themselves. So, just to kind of address what this panel is going to talk about is we are witnessing a changing market. DEIA programs are being cut, early career programs are being scaled back, and some of the jobs are going more global. Things that we may have fallen back on, especially in a studio system, aren't there anymore. And as a group, we are going to discuss how, as an individual, we can continue to create space, own our responsibility in hiring processes, and take advantage of what is in our control right now. So that's kind of our focus, which brings me to these amazing panelists who have utilized their individual kind of powers within their current jobs and have great examples of what we can talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they have amazing careers, and we're going to keep it short. So look at the magazine with all their bios. But Raymond, if you want to start.
Okay. Hi, I'm Raymond Percy. So I've been in animation for I'm entering my third decade, and I started on The Simpsons, and that's where I first became an animation director. And then I went to Disney Feature, and I was a story artist there. And I've continued to direct and story and be a storyboard artist on a lot of different projects, including lately a bunch of Peanuts little mini movies at App for Apple TV.
Hey everyone. Ooh, that was louder than I thought. My name is Michael Wandi. I am a creative director and co-founder of 9B. I have art directed and been a concept artist throughout the industry, whether it's video games, animation, live action. I've worked for things like Star Wars, Mandalorian Season 2, designer of Ahsoka Tano, as well as Boba Fett, Moon Knight for Marvel, as well as Captain America 4, which we don't talk about, and Supergirl. And, it's been one of those things where I've been in the industry for a while, and I've always kind of just been enamored with the amount of talent that was there, but also the talent that was unseen. So it was actually my biggest drive to get into a space and hire people that I've recognized their potential rather than just their experience. So it just happened to be that I met up with two other people who also were passionate about the same subject matter, and that being 9B.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Von Rahl. I'm the Managing Director of Art Creative. If you ask what is that, that's okay. We're on week 4. I was formerly the Managing Director of The Mill, which was under the Technicolor Creative Studios group. So we are a brand new company of 100 employees in LA and New York with 50 people freelancing. But yeah.
Very impressive how she did that too, everyone. Okay, and we're going to break this down a little bit more. So all of you have had amazing careers thus far and are continuing to have amazing careers. But when we're talking about hiring, I feel like a lot of people tie hiring to the recruiter or maybe like an HR team. And when we were talking, kind of prepping for this panel, it's really creator driven and manager driven and creating kind of those spaces in partnership. So all this to say, I kind of want each of you to talk about how you've owned your space in hiring in the teams that you've built in past projects. And we don't have to go in order.
Okay. I was like, are we going in order? So when it comes to hiring, like I mentioned before, one of the biggest hurdles that I recognized, even for myself getting into the industry, was people who were the barriers between myself and the project, right? Even though I was fully capable, sometimes I'm interacting with people who may not fully understand art. And so in this situation, one of the big things that I've seen is recognizing more than just the work that people put online. And I think a great example here is there was a project, a really cool, big project, where they were struggling for a while, and they had some of the best artists in the world working on that project, but they couldn't seem to nail the fashion. and it was going to be taking place, let's say, with a African American character. And they were trying to figure out, like, man, we're trying to make the fashion, we're trying to elevate it, but we can't figure this out. And so I scoured through my Rolodex of people, and there was one guy who came to mind immediately. He's never worked in the industry as a concept artist or, character artist at all, but he could draw really well. But the thing I really looked at was on his Instagram, he was very fashion forward. He dressed so cool. And so I was like, dang, this guy is cool. So I just followed him just for that. I was like, follow. And everything he was doing was just swagged out. The way he posed in front of the posters, the way he dresses, everything. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, I really want you to be my first artist on this project. And he was like, why me? Like, I don't understand. Why would you choose me? I never worked in this industry. And I was like, I just like the way you look. You look cool, right? You just look cool. You embody it. So speaking of body, he definitely bodied the project. Like, he did such a great job. His very first task, that the studio reached out and they were like, who is this person? Like, I've never seen styles like this. This is incredible. And, he's like, where's this person from? Like, he's assuming that they were, someone who was just right next to me. I'm like, oh no, it's this guy. He's Italian who happens to be he's an Italian guy who happens to be from Morocco, who's just amazing when it comes to fashion. They were like, I would have never guessed, right? And so we've done that so many times and time again when we recognize that it's not just being in a situation where you have to hire what you have already. It's recognizing the project and saying, oh, I know who's best for that. Another great example, and I'll keep it short, is like Blue Beetle. We worked on Blue Beetle. This is a Latin superhero, right? And we said, all right, well, I'm not Latin. So let me hire a bunch of Latin artists to propel that because that's their voice, that's their experience. And once again, the director, who was Puerto Rican, he was like, man, like, you guys got from A to B so fast. We pretty much figured out the design of the suit in 1 week, which is insane. And he was like, how did that happen? And I was like, well, these people are familiar with the content, so they don't have to go through the research process of figuring out what works and what doesn't. With any of this, you want to get to the point of play really quickly. And so that's what it was, is people diving into their lived-in experiences and pretty much getting the chance to project that outward onto a project. And that passion and love very much rings true for the people who are on the other side of that too.
I want to pick on what you said because I feel like we've had a lot of like wallet perspectives in the last kind of two. And look at that, time spent hiring authentically for a project. You saved money and time. But switching to the other two, what are your examples?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about building community. That's probably like we hire in groups, right? Like many people interview together. I think you bring different perspectives. I think you get like better talent that way. I think it's a testament to like how fast we were able to hire 100 people, is that this community was built and they believed in each other. So it didn't matter what the name of the brand was behind it. It was more about that this group of people wanted to work together. And so I think it's about how you bring people into that community, and making sure that you're really transparent and like open in that discussion when people are onboarding.
Yeah, for me, it was a specific project that I worked on that really kind of opened my eyes. So when you're in animation, as an animation director, it's very easy to want to keep working with the same people you've worked with before. You have a rhythm with them. Maybe you've kind of come up together, in your careers. And it makes it easier. There's a trust there. So I was given the opportunity to direct a special about the Peanuts characters, specifically Franklin. And Franklin was the first black character introduced to the strip. And we wanted to tell a really authentic story about him and his journey. And I remember while I was working on it at San Diego Comic-Con, they had this big sort of display about him. And I saw all of these families and artists, black families, black artists that were just drawn to his image, taking pictures. And I was like, wow, I have a real responsibility here to understand more than what I think I know. So I made the choice that I wanted to reach out beyond my comfort level of who to hire. Because when you're working on feature story, it's not just you're assigning someone to draw what's in the script. You're having conversations about the story. You're having conversations about the character and their motivations. So not only did I ask my recruiters, hey, can we reach out to people beyond the general community of animators. I also did the same. I started looking online, different artists, started following a lot of different artists and seeing all these really great creative people with different viewpoints and perspectives as artists. And so what was great was I was able to create a crew of experienced people that had been in the business for a long time and newer people. And I was watching them create together and influence each other. The younger, newer people were expressing opinions about culture and society that the older people didn't have, and the older people's work was inspiring the younger people how to kind of level up their work. So it was so what was great about it was in the end I was able to have a more authentic story. I was able to have these artists that were able to kind of level up their skills and make connections, and and also now I kind of expanded my talent base of now these are other people who I want to work with again in the future.
Yeah, so all of you took your ownership and created space on your teams for the betterment of the impact of the project. But one thing that when we were all kind of discussing your examples and what you all brought up in these projects where you were hiring people is the mentorship aspect and being thoughtful from the start when creating teams, because we all have probably worked under a crunch or a timeline where you just want to get the thing done, but all of you said you structured from the beginning and were really thoughtful about mentorship. So how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's buy-in from leadership right up front. We talk about this all the time, like people want to do internship programs or how do we bring in new talent, but it's making sure that your leadership is like who's dedicating their time and space to that. Like I'm always like, who's going to sit next to that person and teach them the pipeline? Who's going to teach them how to work with all the tools that we have? So I think it's making sure that everyone understands what their part of that is and making sure that they're bought into like absolutely we want to make sure that mentorship is a huge part of it, but that takes your time and your energy, and you need to build that into your planning.
And similarly, for myself, I think that when looking at just the way, say, artists specifically operate, they get inspired by each other from the littlest thing, right? From the smallest thing, they'll get inspired. So something I kind of enacted on purpose was putting together teams where there are maybe one or two really senior artists, and then placing them next to a new artist who has a lot of potential, right? Because it's not just about doing it in a charity sense. It's also making sure that the person who deserves to be there is there. And so taking that person with potential, something that happens, which is really funny, it's like a phenomenon to me. It's these artists, they come in with such ingenuity. They're like coming up with these brand new ideas because no one's told them no yet. Right? And most of us know when working in the industry for a long time, you understand what works over and over again, and that kind of like fine tunes your pipeline. So that's what the seniors bring is they deliver a pipeline that the young artists get to understand and see like, oh, maybe I can't do that, or this is how to get things approved. But the new artist is kind of balancing back with ingenuity, and you kind of see the pair when I've seen this so many times. The senior artist does something really cool and is done on time, and the new artist does something and it's just like this crazy idea that would never work. But to an artist, they're looking and they're like, whoa, that's cool. And then the young artist is like, oh, that's how that works. And so they kind of like eventually start to like not get competitive, but get inspired through the project. And you start seeing the senior artists do something that's like kind of a little bit outside of their norm to kind of keep up and kind of like say like, I'm the big dog here, right? But then the young artist is learning on his way. And so we've seen that where the artist will start off here and then by the end of the project they're here. And something I also like to do is also making sure that I'm recognizing when someone is beyond what their position is. So as an example, we've had an artist where we worked with a few projects, and he was relatively new when he got to me. but I could see this leadership in him that was beyond him just being an artist. And so at some point, we got a really cool project, and I said, hey, I'm gonna just say his name. Hey, Gary, I think that you would be really great for this job. And he's like, oh, cool, yeah, I'd love to be an artist. And I was like, oh, no, no, not as an artist, as an art director. And he's like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm cool. I don't think I have the experience. And I was like, no, I have the faith in you, though, that you can do this because you're an amazing artist, like really top notch, but also his communication as well as his attention to detail, not just within the art, but within the people on his team, is something that I perceived that it would be a really good fit. And so luckily, he was like, okay, I don't have faith in myself, but I'm going to have faith in you that has faith in me. And I was like, all right, word. So it ended up being that he really did a great job on that project, so much so that now it's been about a year and a half to 2 years since that project released. But every time I bump into the showrunner, the art director on the other side of that project, they're always bringing up how amazing of an experience it was working with him because he was such a good team member. So it's not just recognizing someone and saying like, yeah, you're a great cog in this part of the machine. It's also saying, you know what, this could actually fit here. And then somehow it makes the machine run even better.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I always want to make time for teaching. I am a firm believer in the making the project is as important as the final project, and that it should be a joyful experience, and it should be a place where people want to work hard because they're excited. So I think if I can't always do it as the director, I always make sure that my head of story is a patient person that's going to help a younger artist that's learning, maybe who hasn't been in this kind of production before. Give them time to kind of level up and make the space for them to level up by making sure you're balancing your crew with like experienced people and newer people, like what you're saying about bringing in new ideas. It's true. I think great creative people are always looking to learn. Like you never are sitting on your laurels like I'm done learning. Now I'm just gonna do what I do. It's like then you're bad, right? so it's like it's like the more you can mix people up, the more everyone's gonna learn from it.
Mhm. I'm gonna pick on you guys a little bit.
Uh-oh.
No, don't worry. but like, Raymond, you talked about establishing something with the recruiter up front and saying like, this is what I need for my story, my team. Anastasia, you said I went to the executives that said do internship program, and you're like, that's money, that's time, that's mentorship. How do you have those conversations with the top and like bringing others on board to kind of create that kind of realistic timeline within the constraints?
I mean, we built it ourselves. I think quite often, if somebody wasn't willing to accept an internship program, we were like, how do you build that on the back of a project? How are you like, can we bring someone in and someone will sit next to them and help them in this area? So it is really getting the people on the ground on board with the idea and then setting it forth. Like now, we are the company, but before it was saying, this is important to us and we'll spend the dollars to make it work.
I guess for me, if I'm in charge of a project, I'm not going to ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing to also put work into as well. So if I'm asking a recruiter to, or in a specific way, to go out of what they know, I'm going to help jumpstart it. I'm going to do some research on my own, give examples of what I'm looking for, so it can be a conversation. I'm not going to just throw them to the wolves and expect them to be able to do it personally.
What about you, Mike? Because you partner a lot with larger companies that obviously you kind of have to fulfill their need. Do you feel like there's something in there that you kind of have to navigate when setting expectations, or do you kind of manage it from your perspective?
Yeah, I can speak on it in a few different ways, but I think first things first is one of the things I make sure to do because there's been certain clients where they're wanting to, I guess, filter which character or which artist will be putting on projects, and as we've seen, like we've been so successful at this point that that way doesn't necessarily work, and we've definitely seen where kind of using the old model. Because I could be honest here. Like one of our early projects, the other team wanted to pick the artist, and it didn't go as easy as I know it could have, right? And we flipped the artists out, switched them out with another artist who I thought was better tuned to the job, and they did a great job. And so one of the things I'm always willing to bank on is my reputation and knowing that I hadn't failed in this space, right? So it's kind of like a trust-based thing. It's if I don't do a good job, then you can say everything you want, but I have confidence in the people, and I communicate that with them as well. Though I say, hey, I happen to know this artist a little bit better than what they present online, because I think most people are actually pretty bad at presenting themselves online, respectfully, right? So, so like sometimes it's very easy to undersell yourself and your capabilities and abilities online when someone doesn't actually know you or like examine deeper. So one of the things I make sure to do is to examine deeper and give them the reason why, in hopes that not only is it to let me do what I need to do, but also for their own future education. And when they recruit in the future, they're like, oh, you know what? I didn't know that this artist would be a great pick. So maybe I can think a little bit further into this.
I think that trust word is really important. I like quite often we talk about with clients all the time, like if we've given you great product over and over and over again, there has to be some trust on how we're doing it. And I think that is how you can build an artist's reel that maybe doesn't have the thing exactly, but then because you have the trust with that client of delivering, they might let you put someone on something that wasn't initially going to be picked.
All this to say they're great leaders. I love that answer. So we're going to shift just a tiny bit. I don't know what our time is. Okay. Sorry. But we'll wrap it up with this, and then we'll turn to Q&A. But one thing that we also talked about when we were kind of prepping for this panel, and something that's been talked a lot about today, is the global hiring of it all. And each of you have worked on global teams. And I think one thing that came up in our discussion, Anastasia, you actually use this word, the wallet perspective. And you said that's one aspect of global hiring, but then you said there are other intentions that should be considered in this global market. So can you guys talk about your international teams and the benefits, some of the other intentions that we should be considering?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with people are afraid of the word global team, but I think there's nothing wrong with saying building the best person for the job is a huge part of how you should build projects, and that doesn't mean what country they sit in. It's more about the talent, as long as it's led by talent. We at the mill trained a whole team in Bangalore, and those people were part of our team. So when we started ARC, we hired 16 people from Bangalore immediately. It wasn't necessarily a cost discussion. It was more about these people are a part of the community. They have worked on these projects. So it's making sure that the reason why you're doing it is because you're trying to make the best product with the best people.
Yeah, you got to be careful going with the lowest bidder, because sometimes they're offering the lowest offer because they just want the job and they're thinking we'll figure it out later, or they'll farm it out to people who you didn't approve. It's and I've been seeing that a lot. I've been working a lot with like Canadian companies, and the ones that will offer like the fair but more honest price are sometimes losing jobs to this. I think what you need to do is you have to look at the quality of the work. What I've loved in the past 7-8 years or so is like working with the fact that you can work with the world easier because you can communicate online. You can find the best person for the job, and I remember working with a bunch of artists in Brazil recently, and for some of them it was a real there were so few companies for a while there that they had to wait at the door hoping they were going to get picked to get hired, and they were all so passionate and did such a great job that tapping into the artists there, you were getting amazing work. So it's that global is a good thing. You can find the best artists for the right projects.
I think in regards to what we do, it's to me never the best idea to lead with thinking about the wallet first when it comes to creativity, because something that happens that I've seen time and time again, it's when someone is thinking with their wallet first initially, and you go and you hire, maybe a studio or a team that costs very low, you're usually having to do way more revisions than necessary. And so it kind of ends up not only affecting your time, but the money that is spent, anyways. So to me, it's very much about kind of being a sniper when it comes to work. It's how fast can we get from A to B with the best quality? Because at the end of the day, this is your product, this is my reel, right? So it works best for both of us to ensure that we're never leading with, oh, well, this artist is cheaper than that artist. It's which artist is best for the job.
Yeah, sometimes there's a reason why they're the cheapest. Something to really keep in mind.
Okay. Any last thoughts, because we do have to leave time for Q&A. Anything you want to leave? If we're not, we can turn it around. Parting words. Let them be hopeful.
I'm happy to do hopeful. I think the part that is like the fact that this is a dialogue, everyone's talking about all of these things openly, that's huge. And also for me personally, like to see a community come around people when something bad happens is a big deal. So I think I'm enthusiastic about the future, and I think that there's amazing talent that's all around the world, that there's great work to be made.
I think something that I've seen within this time, especially when the industry was going through what it was going through, is seeing how innovative people have become when they have time to play in the dip, right? Which the dip is like the hard times. And I've seen so many people like come out the other end with a book, or come out the other end with, oh, I've made a show and it got picked up, or I've learned how to use this program in a way that I never would have thought, and I now made a whole company. Like, I've seen these things happen during this time, and it's been really cool. And knowing that, the industry is coming back is also really great. But seeing the people elevate beyond their struggle was really inspiring on my end.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so true. I think for me, it's like we all picked being in this industry partly because it was fun for us. There's something about it that we were passionate about. So to stay passionate about it, it's sometimes that's hard. It's work to stay excited, stay passionate. And one great way is to like keep reaching out to other people and people that are different from you, and finding what's exciting to them, and that keeps sparking your excitement.
Yeah, so I hope from this panel, if you didn't get it from all these three, is even if they are scaling back DEIA programs and the industry is shifting, there, as an individual, you can kind of take the power and create that space and still continue with your own personal mission to make the best products. All right, Q&A. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alice, I have a mic. Who got the cues? All right.
Hi, I am Caroline Norton. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Innovation at The Last Mile. We're a company that focuses on educating people who are currently incarcerated. We have an video production course that we have folks taking all around the country. And we're constantly talking to employers about exactly this: impact hiring, sustainable hiring, authentically hiring. And we've seen a lot of this come up in the space as it pertains to people with records. We saw this in Sing Sing, we saw it with Daughters. And I'm wondering if in this particular conversation, you have any insight into how that relates to all of this, and what piece, if you've had any experience hiring people with records, kind of just what you would have to say about it. Or if you haven't, why haven't you?
Well, I don't think I've ever known if someone had a record, honestly. But it's really cool to hear about what you're doing, because it's like that's kind of a neat sort of thing to get to know more about, because then it's like to make an active choice to maybe hire from that talent pool it's kind of a neat idea.
I think in regards to people with records, there's such a wide span of people, of types of records, right? But I've worked with an artist who had a record, but I didn't know until it was over. And but it wouldn't have changed my mind anyways, right? It's just like hiring an artist with a degree. To me, the end result is the work, not anything else. Of course, if they're easy to work with, that makes my life way easier. But them having a record for me doesn't really interfere with my hiring.
Yeah, same. I don't know, and I never asked.
Yeah, it's true. It's like if I'm looking up an artist, I'm only looking at their artwork. I don't dive any deeper than that.
Who else? Come on, we're not this shy.
I feel like someone has a hard question that they don't want to ask.
Yeah, ask it.
Hi, I'm Nick West, and in one of my jobs, I teach at a university, and I see a lot of noise on LinkedIn and other spaces, like it's like immoral to teach people to go into specifically animation or into video games just because the world is a certain way right now. I obviously don't agree with that for a number of reasons, mostly because I think a lot of artists can't help but do their art. So I don't know how you could deny that experience to someone. But from an investment standpoint, people spending a lot of money on education, which is the space that I'm in. What do you think about that? The morality of it in training the next generation of artists. I'm not actually opposed to it. I'm just interested in the dialogue.
I actually think that that's an interesting form of verbiage for whoever said it's like immoral, right? Because I actually had a very similar experience when I was in school. I went to a school called Art Center. It's like really, big school. And they, when I first got in there, I was always a character designer. I just didn't know. I would look at the way my mom dressed, and I just always thought that there was something cool about that. And I was like, oh, I want to make characters with cool costumes. But I didn't know that it was a job. Eventually, when I got into school, they would always try and direct me to like doing environments and backgrounds. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, why? Like, clearly, my personal work is me drawing characters and drawing people. I don't understand. They're like, oh, well, there's not that many jobs in the industry for character design, so we don't want to set you up to fail. And I think one of the funny things is like kind of moving off of faith in a way, where it's like if I'm passionate about something and I understand what it takes to get good, I'm probably going to be successful, right? It's only a matter of time. It may not happen right off the bat. It may not happen as soon as I leave school, but eventually those two things match up and it'll happen. And so, funny enough, once I decided to just kind of slow down on doing environments and focusing on what I wanted to do, it was insane how the jobs started coming in and they haven't stopped. It's been like nonstop and, sometimes working 3 to 4 jobs at a time because this thing I'm very passionate about happens to be coming in my direction. So I think that is not immoral. I think that when it comes to when people are passionate about something, let them be passionate. And I feel like the opportunities will find them when they sync up with their abilities, right? To hinder someone, I think it's like the opposite of what a school should do because society's going to do that for you anyways. It's going to tell you all the things that you shouldn't be doing, right? And that's not the thing that you should listen to, obviously. But I think more people don't do what they're passionate about because of the hearsay and the chatter beyond their listening to their own voice. They listen to everyone else's. So I don't think a school is a place to tell someone what they shouldn't be doing if they're actually into it.
It's so crazy. That's great. Yeah. What's so crazy about this is I remember like when it was the exact opposite that like, right? It's like, I think it was my wife. She was in a class or something and maybe not someone I know, but they were like, the teacher was like, if you're not interested in animation, I'm not interested in helping you. It was like the complete opposite before. So it swings back and forth. And it's like, yeah, I think as a school, like if you bring in people from the industry to talk and they can talk about, look, it's not going to be easy. Here's the challenges, but to tell someone don't do it because you won't make money at it. I don't think lie to them and say, oh, you're going to be a millionaire, so please buy more of our classes or whatever. But it's like you can be realistic with someone and still encourage them to follow their passion,
Yeah, and learning is learning. I feel like the university conversation, you see a lot of noise around it being a for-profit business, which it's true. It's expensive to go to some of these art schools like Art Center, but at the same time, it is learning. And learning is always going to better you in some way. So whether you do it at a for-profit like Art Center, where you get a great degree and you get industry connections out of that, or maybe you take a class from an artist that you connect with and you pay $100, like learning is learning.
Oh, I also have one more note, if you don't mind, for me adding to that. Similar to what I just said, society will do it to you anyways. When I was trying to get into Art Center, I had everyone and their mama telling me, "Oh, that school is too expensive. You don't have a job. I don't know how you're going to go there." And I just kind of shut people out most of the time. So I just didn't listen, and I just kept working on my portfolio. And literally every day I would hear people, "I don't know why you're wasting your time. You're not going to make it. You can't afford it. You should get a job now so maybe then you can afford the $250,000 that you'll be paying later." Right? And I'm like just ignoring them. I send in my portfolio. They give me some corrections. They had like a really adverse reaction to my portfolio. I get mad. I do it again, and I like level it up. I send it back, and then I get a free ride, right? So it's kind of one of those funny things, once again, where someone is telling you, "No, you can't do this. You shouldn't be wasting your time." And it's like if I listened to the people on the outside, I would have just never been in that position in the first place. But listening to myself, I got a free ride and the opportunity of a lifetime in my, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, our head of CG started as a runner. So, like, he trained inside the company and now he runs the department. So, I do think it all depends on how you build your teams. And now he's the first person in every graduation class to be like, let's see everyone that's coming through. Like, who can we bring in? But that's why I thought the other way. I think quite often I'm always like, okay, you want to hire everyone that's gone to school. What else? Who else is there? There might be really talented people who weren't able to pay that tuition. So making sure that there's a balance there. But yeah, I think it's how your teams are built. So if you have people who have seen themselves grow inside of a company or seen that success, then they also look for that in the next generation of talent.
Glad I went to the top.
Sorry if this is a redundant question. I just step out for a call. Forgive me. When it comes to the unconventional hires, like Michael, like you said, how this Italian you saw and you liked his style and you brought him in, how do you, I don't know if the word is convince, the artist management group or whoever is actually doing the hiring to circumvent the parameters that they've created themselves for these positions in order to bring in these unconventional hires?
Funny enough, oftentimes I lead with it because something that I've kind of discovered, and I very much encourage underprivileged members of our community to like also lean into. There was something that happened to me when I was getting into the industry where I would feel like I needed to be quiet and like go with the flow and things of that nature. And there was this one time I was very passionate about something, and I made it very clear, like, "Hey, you guys are making the wrong decision," and I gave them reason as to why. Of course, I was respectful, but I was like open, right? And I remember their reaction was, "Huh, you're right," and then they like totally redid the whole thing. And then I did that again and again and again. So now I kind of lead with it where it's like, if I'm passionate about something, I'm going to make it known. Of course, I'll always be respectful. That's like number one. But when someone has a hiring practice that doesn't really serve them, it's kind of a funny thing, right? Because it's like you are in charge of this billion-dollar corporation with an unlimited budget to hire whoever you want, and you did that. However, you need help. So I'm the help in this regard where I feel like I see a hole, I'll mention it, and I'll say something like, "Hey, I know that you feel this way. I'm more so going to present to you a style and a vibe rather than a person. I'll find the person." And most of the time they go along with that. But the number one thing is I've recognized that pushing a person does not work, right? But it's because no matter what, everything is going to have to be filtered through me regardless. So once I push towards the vibe and I say, hey, I'm thinking that your world kind of feels like this and it looks like this and and I get them into that, then I go and I find the people who can exact that vision if I don't do it myself, and then we kind of roll through that together. But I always give them the option, especially like that's like the biggest part of our company. It's you can say, I don't like this, right? You can say, hey, can we switch this person out? It just hasn't happened, but it's an option. So I make sure that they know that it's not something that they're locked into, because that isn't really fair on either side. But it's like, hey, trust me, but you have the choice once you see what we do to switch people out.
I want to build on that because Raymond, with like the recruiter aspect and going to them, that's like a partner that you have to work with. Anastasia, you have to partner within a larger org. Have you struggled within that partnership when you bring these kind of thoughts to the table, kind of building off of that question? Or did you find it like challenging, like there's a must hire? Like, how do you make sure that you're navigating that correctly?
I think it's more for us putting people on jobs for clients, right? So again, I think it's the trust thing, but I think it's trust both ways and education of that trust. So like if it's not going well, talking about it, being pretty open and honest about like this is our idea, we want to do something different. And then if the client's responding like we might want something else, it's like okay, then we'll pivot. Like being able to have that dialogue and being pretty open and transparent like both ways is I think how you continue that trust and people keep letting you make decisions and offering them new talent.
I think for me, it actually worked both ways. There were times where I was reluctant to bring in someone that the studio was really excited about. And I was able to also learn how to like listen a little better too, so that I could hear their reasons why and understand that, oh, we're on the same page. This is why they're suggesting that person. So you can go both ways.
All right. We're going to have to wrap. I realized this was turned off. Okay.
What rap are you doing? Sorry.
Break dances.
All right. So we're going to go into our next break. Not dance, but out. I was going with the theme.
That was really good.
I also want to be mindful of bladders, going with the potty breaks. So can we flip to the next slide of what our cues are going to be that we want everyone to answer? All right. So first one is, how do you define successful hiring in this changing landscape? What are some ways that we can safeguard DEIA and the values we hold dear in the hiring process? What are the things that hiring managers and creatives can do to keep driving DEIA work forward? I think we got some amazing inspo from the panelists. And then the second is create a hiring strategy. This is your project. I want you to do the project, please. Create a hiring strategy for a brand new entertainment startup, could be ARC. The emphasis, inclusive hiring and authentic storytelling that can be effective in today's climate. Can you all give me a round of applause for our panelists?
And we're shifting things around a little bit, so as soon as you're done with your workshops, we're going to dismiss everybody for lunch before we reconvene. I also want to highlight this idea around effective in today's climate, because we have a huge incumbent workforce in Los Angeles right now, and I just think that needs to be part of this conversation, especially to many of our very skilled union partners who are out of work. And so I just wanted to throw that into the mix as we're discussing both new up and coming talent and how do we empower the artists that are really suffering in this space at this time. So on that note, you should have your second dot on your thing. You should be seated at the right table. You know the rules. If you're not, let's take a little shift, move around. We'll wait till there's some.
Great job.
You should be at the second color on your thing. So the first one was red for me. My second one is orange. I am your facilitator, PS orange. Unless somebody else there is facilitating and I can, second dot. Oh, am I wrong? Oh, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. No, your first dot was the other one. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, whatever, who cares? Second dot, I guess. Or first dot, doesn't matter. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just go somewhere, sit down.